So we are about to listen to another wonderful, wonderful person, Tomi Balogun. She's going to be talking about designing a life that aligns with wealth. Welcome on stage, Tomi.
Right, so this is my second time in Rwanda, and as a full-fledged Nigerian, I'd like to say thank you for bringing me here, Christine. Thank you for welcoming me here as well, and thank you to everyone for attending this event. I'd like to start with acknowledging Christine. Now, I'm in the financial education space. I'm an investment professional as well. And I know how tough it is to put something like this together, right? And to get people to sign up and to get people to show up. So I'd like to ask you to please give Christine a round of applause for putting this together, the vision, the passion, not giving up, even when it seemed tough. All right, so I've been asked to speak about designing a life that builds wealth. So I'd like to go back. I will start from where it all started as a child for me. Growing up, my dad would buy me newspapers, Financial Standard, The Economist. He just always had them coming into the house, right? And I would read them. I was studying economics in school at the time, and I would study, I would read them, and, I actually thought at a certain point that was financial literacy, right? So I started to work. I, got a job in a consulting firm, and I was earning a salary over a period of time, and then I think it was about 4 years in, I had to go do my MBA. And then after accepting my, MBA, the admission and deciding to go do the MBA, I realized that I was broke, basically. So basically, I'd been working for 4 years, earning a salary and spending it all. And it was such a wake-up call because I was going to go do my MBA for 2 years, and I realized that I didn't have savings, I didn't have anything saved up, maybe just owned a couple of stocks in the stock market, but it was such a wake-up call for me to realize that I knew what to do. Right, I had some knowledge about financial literacy. I was creating, budgets and financial plans for banks at the time. Well, not in terms of plans, but just, helping banks to plan and to acquire other companies and doing some consulting. But I had not taken steps as a personal person, in my personal life, to be deliberate about, saving, about investing in assets at a time. So which is why a lot of times it's very easy to know what to do, but not do it. And I remember just deciding that I had to do better, right? So during my MBA, I started speaking to some of my classmates, and that was when the idea dropped that we should start an investment club, basically. And as Rebecca said, the people you surround yourself with, very, very important, right? I was classmates with people that had big dreams. We would sit in class and read case studies about, Silicon Valley, about people buying companies. And we thought, you know what? It was time to do better with money. And then we decided to start an investment club at the time. We called it Midas, right? Because we believed that we had the Midas touch. If only we knew that we're about to lose a lot of money, right? But, we started out 4 of us, 5 of us, I included. And what was interesting was I was the only female and 4 other guys. It wasn't like we did not invite other females. Other people in my class that were females. But most of them just thought, you know what, you guys are not sure what you're going to do yet. You're going to take a risk with money. And they just didn't think they wanted to start their first salary after an MBA investing in something they were not sure about. But I was ready to do better. And the guys I had around me, encouraged me. My husband encouraged me at the time as well. And we started to put money together. First job, first salary, right? And that journey started. I remember the first business we invested in at the time, because, when you hear a lot of Silicon Valley stories at the time about investing in a startup, and then getting 20x, 100x. How many of you have heard those stories before? And doubling and, getting a good return on your money. And we invested in the first business. We met this guy who was running, I would say, something similar to Uber at the time. At the time, Uber was not in Nigeria. And, you just had this service providing the car hire service to, young professionals. And we saw his numbers and we thought, very fantastic numbers, this could work out. And then we invested. We bought a couple of cars and we invested in that business. And, when you do an MBA program, you think you know everything about business, right? You knew all of the risk. We had all the risk mitigation frameworks. We had these conversations. And then we told him to give us, post-dated checks to ensure that we could get our return over a period of time. And then the check started to bounce. First month, second month, third month, and we thought, okay, what's going on here? And we reached out to him to ask questions. It took a while before we realized that he just lacked integrity. And I think that was my first lesson in business, knowing that, look, it was okay to decide to invest in a business, but you had to, believe and ensure that the person you're investing in had integrity and would ensure that they'll give you a good return on your money. Now, did that stop me from continuing my investment journey? No. It was something that I decided that, I had to learn better and I had to do better about. And thankfully, I started to blog about it at the time. I had my personal blog on my personal website, and I would blog about my investment stories, all of the lessons I was learning, right? I would work into stockbroking firms at the time and ask them about investing in the Nigerian stock market. At the time, we couldn't invest in the US stock market from Nigeria. Now we can. The world has opened up a bit more. So I'll ask all of these questions, and I realized that there were a lot more people that had to learn, right? And I started to blog about it. And then people started to reach out to ask me questions to say, you know what, we really like this information that you're sharing. Can we join your investment club? But, my other friends said, no, we don't want new members in our investment club. So I thought, you know what, I would just start a community and just share all of the information that I had anyway and just share with everyone. And we started to share that information. And, over a period of time, that community grew to 2,000 plus members because we wanted to ask people to join in by referral or be ensured that you knew what you're coming into as a community. And we started to see that people, initially, they would not want to make investment decisions. But when they joined the community and they saw other people taking investment decisions, they realized that, this was possible. I could invest in this, or I could invest in that. And over a period of time, we built, a community that not only invested in the stock market, now we invested in VC funds. Now, when we got to that point, we realized that, okay, this was the big game. And what did we do? We just syndicated capital. So for us, it was about providing access, right? We realized that then if you wanted to write a check to join or to invest in a VC fund in Nigeria or African VC funds, you needed to have $500,000. Now, at the time, the Paystack story broke. I don't know how many of you know Paystack in this room. You know Paystack? It's a financial technology company. Stripe acquired Paystack at the time, and then we also saw the Flutterwave become a unicorn, and people started to get excited about investing in businesses or startups at the time. And we thought, why don't we provide access? Now, the theme here is balancing access, building wealth, and changing futures. And I'm sharing this story to realize that a lot of times it starts with access. You don't know what you don't know if you don't have access. It starts with access to information. Now, I took those steps to, start an investment club with friends, collaborating with other people. And we started to ask questions because we realized that when we work into an asset management company and we told them that, there were 5 of us investing together, they paid attention because we had more money. If it was just me, they probably wouldn't have paid attention. And we started to get access to information. I would walk into rooms and then they would tell me about deals, about commercial papers that were about to be released. I remember when MTN was about to do a direct listing on the Nigerian stock market. And it was access to information. So the head of the security firm reached out to me and said, Tommy, we're about to list MTN. Would you like to participate? And I said, of course. What's the minimum? And they said 50 million. I said, oh, wow, okay. But you know what? I didn't stop there. I said, you know what? How can I get other people to collaborate and let's do this together? And I reached out to them. I sent an email to members of my community. And I kid you not, within 48 hours, we raised that money. And we participated in the MTN direct listing. And guess what? MTN listed at 140 naira per share at the time. I mean, if you convert that to dollars, that's probably like what? $10, right? Depending on the rate you're thinking about. And today, MTN is about 800 naira, right? That was access at the time. And for me, it was enabling access for a lot more people. Although I have men and women in my community, but I like to say that women also participated because we do have a good number of women that got to participate because more people were doing this together. And today, when I see people reach out to me and say to me, I just earned dividend on my MTN stock, that fills my heart with pride because it was providing access, right? And over time, we started to build communities. And I remember at the time, one of my mentors, Tara Fela-Durotoye, I don't know how many of you know her, she's a beauty entrepreneur, way more than that now, and Mrs. Aoshika as well. They put together an event, and it was to motivate a lot of women, just like we're doing here, and just like Christine is doing here, to get them to think about wealth differently, to get them to think about wealth as a place, from a place of identity, understanding the psychology of money, a lot of things that Rebecca has already shared this morning. And in that room, we realized that there was power in collaboration, and this was something I was doing already, by the way. So I thought it would be great to, ask TFD, I call her TFD, see if we can get women to collaborate together to own real estate at the time. And we thought, that was a great idea. We put out the idea, and guess what? 250 women signed up, and we started the process. But guess what? When it was time to move money, only 40 women showed up, right? But we continued the process because we wanted to make sure that we proved that this was possible. And I remember taking it up as someone who would lead the operations at the time. 40 women, fine, we'll get started, we'll continue this journey. We just wanted to prove that it was possible for women to collaborate, to do something. And I remember, going along there's this expressway in Nigeria, Lagos, is the Lekki Expressway. It's huge development, growing. Over 70 or 80,000 people are moving into that corridor on an annual basis, huge place. And, going down and thinking that, okay, we wanted to buy real estate. We wanted to look into what the options were. And we had already started women contributing money. Then they were contributing about $70 a month, 50,000 naira at the time. So $70 a month. And we started the contribution over time. And then we started to look at land and we realized that, wow, we probably couldn't buy property. We wanted to look into land. And then eventually we found a developer who had multiple plots of land at the time. And there was a lot of growth coming in. There are two things you look at when we want to buy land in Nigeria: population growth and development. We saw that there was huge population growth going on at the time, and we saw that the government was also developing that area. Now, that is how you get appreciation of real estate. And we found a great opportunity. But guess what? It was priced at $2,500. That's about 3.5 million naira. And we thought, oh, wow, this is way above our budget, right? Because the women were putting together $70, which will come to about 2.4 million, I think $1,700 in 2 years. That was the plan. But you know what? I thought, no, I'm not coming just as myself. I'm coming with 40 other women, and we wanted to buy in bulk. At the time, we did the numbers. Some people were buying in multiples of units, and we were going to buy about 60 plots of land at the time. A plot of land is about 500 square meters in Lagos. So I reached out to them, and I said, I'm not just buying one, I'm buying 60, so I need you to give me a discount, the power of negotiation. And they said, all right, how many are you buying? I said, 60. And guess what? We got a discount. It went from $2,500 to $1,700 per plot. That was group buying. That was the power of negotiation. That's the power we have when we come together. And that is what you see a lot in the industry. Men come together and syndicate and negotiate. That's the power you have when you come together with other women that are thinking like you. And not only did we negotiate that discount, we also negotiated a payment plan because we didn't have all the money, right? So we thought, what? We don't have all the money now, but give us a payment plan over a 12-month period. And we did that. Now, as I speak to you today, that land is valued at about $10,000. Now, all of those women got into that opportunity with other women. And it was $70 per unit. Some people did multiple units, right? And there was a payment plan, there was a discount because of the power of collaboration. 40 women own real estate on a growth corridor in Lagos State. Now, that is a story I love to share because it shows you what happens when you move with people that think like you, right? And over time, I realized that was a great story, and I continued to, replicate that story because what is success without replication, right? You have to replicate it. So I took that same model that worked in real estate, and I took it into VC funds. Like I said, we syndicated a fund. We brought 100 people together, and we raised $750,000. And we invested in a top VC fund that has invested in over 40 startups in Africa today. And then we did it the second time as well to show that the first time was not a fluke, right? And I'm proud to say that we are LPs with top institutions like Meta, right? Top institutions like FBN Quest in Nigeria. Now, you don't get to sit in those kind of rooms without collaborating. Now, a lot of times it's easy to look at yourself and say that what I have is limited. I don't have enough. But that's where you think collaboration. That's where you get into the right rooms. So sometimes you might think that, I don't have enough access. I don't have enough information, or I might be limited in how I think. But if you move with people that are ready to step forward and take the risk and move you into rooms that you can't get in yourself, you would find yourself achieving goals that you never would have thought you would have achieved. That is my story. And that is a story that I started to, ensure that I could bring more people into over a period of time. We did that in real estate, the stock market. We did that with VC funds. And I'm looking forward to doing that with acquiring businesses as well. But over time, we started to see that, look, there was a lot going on in the African space. A lot of African countries were going through currency devaluation, there was inflation in the economy. So, of course, as an investment professional, you know that you have to always build a portfolio that is diversified. You can't afford to be only, exposed to certain assets. You always have to build a portfolio that there's some sort of correlation with assets that are non-correlated to ensure that you always have a balance no matter what's happening in the economy. So we started to see that this was happening, and we wanted to bring in diversification. And what did we do? We thought, you know what, let's check out international markets, because really we are not limited to our African markets, right? I mean, these guys, the British guys and Americans, come to Africa to invest, so why can't we go invest there as well? So we went to the UK market, and we thought, you know what, let's syndicate this as well. Remember, power of replication. And we went there, and we syndicated a deal to invest in UK commercial real estate. And it was a 2-year deal, because we realized that we didn't want to do residential, real estate in the UK. And we did that deal, invested in the commercial property, and exited in 2 years. Now, that's a great story to share as well. And we've done that in the US as well. In the US, we did land banking, because we saw an opportunity to buy land at, when they're auctioned out for cheap. And, I'm sharing all of these stories to show you that, look, for me, designing a life that builds wealth has been a journey, starting with me getting the wake-up call to knowing that, oh, what have I been doing with my money, right? Have I been saving? I've not been, ensuring that I was investing, and realizing that I needed people on that journey. Sometimes you don't want to go, all the way yourself. And I found a group that, we could take these decisions together. We could talk about investment together. And we started to, explore what the options were in our market. And that gave us access. Now, I didn't stop at having that access. I opened up that access to other people. And we started to ensure that we could get more people into the rooms, and get access to the investment options that we had available at the time. I started to build upon that. So sometimes, designing a life should not just be about you, right? Sometimes when you just think about it's just me, myself, and I, it limits your ability to think big, right? The only reason why I started to look beyond just building a portfolio that was just, even within my own investment club, was because I started to think about collaborating with other people. I could have just thought, I would have to wait until I have a $500,000 check to invest in a VC fund. But realizing that I could bring other people into that opportunity opened up rooms to me as well. Because when I step forward, I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking because I represent a group of people here. So when I sit in LPAC meetings, which is the Limited Partner Advisory Committee, I'm a syndicate lead. Now, I'm speaking with people representing institutions or organizations like Meta, but I'm not just representing an organization. I'm representing real people, real women that want to ensure they get return on their investment. So when I speak from that lens. And over time, a friend of mine decided that he was going to replicate that and started an angel network in the US. It's called the Midlothian Angel Network. And today I sit on the board of that network, right? And the goal was always to invest in startups that, in Silicon Valley. Remember, we started with that vision, right, to invest in Silicon Valley. And we started to ensure that we got people together. And today we have 200 members in that network, Africans in diaspora. We also have other immigrants join the network. And once we started to see what was happening, we saw that, of course, currency devaluation, we had to create a way to diversify and hedge and protect the value of our portfolio, right? And beyond just doing real estate in other markets, like I said, we did in the UK, and we also did in the US. I also wanted us to get into private capital opportunities. Then, of course, market size opened up with apps coming into Africa, so a lot of people could invest in the public market, in the New York Stock Exchange. But I also wanted us to get into private capital opportunities in the US. And again, the power of numbers. We started to get into the right rooms. And guess what? OpenAI, the opportunity came, and it was time to get on the cap table. And we thought, you know what? Let's syndicate this, right? And we did. And today we are investors in OpenAI. Guess what? Anthropic came as well. And in January, we syndicated, and we are investors in Anthropic. Honestly, I want to show you that I'm sharing the stories to show you that focus on possibilities. Focus on possibilities. It started with me just deciding that I wanted to do better with money. Now, did I sit down and design the life? Sometimes it just makes sense as you take one step, the next step, and then the next step. And as long as you have very clear principles that I'm building a life that is better. And I'm also opening up access to other people. And in doing that, we keep moving to the next level. Now, when the Anthropic deal came, I remember when, a friend of mine running the network brought the deal to the board, and we thought, oh, wow, Anthropic, are we really going to get on capital for Anthropic? I was like, yes, this is real. We did all the DD, wanted to ensure that this was real, and we put it out in the network, and I think within 5 days, we raised about $600,000, and we thought, you know what, let's get this on, and that's the power. And when we reached out, and they had given us a $200,000 unit, and they said that we could only invest $200,000. But we said, you know what, we have tripled that, right? So you have to open up more units for us. And they thought, oh, wow, who are these people? Now, there were people from across. We had members from Nigeria, from Ghana, invest. So just to show you that you don't have to invest only in Africa, right? You can also participate in the big companies today. Now, who are the bigger companies more than OpenAI and Anthropic today, right? And today we are on the cap table. And guess what that means? That when Anthropic lists, when the Anthropic earns revenue, when the value of Anthropic grows, we get to participate in that. It's not simply using Claude or using OpenAI and say, okay, I love it, I love AI, it's a tool, but I'm also an investor in that company. That is possible when you decide that you want to do better with money. It doesn't end with, oh, I just do little now, I do little now. You keep growing as you move with people that help you. So what is wealth? You know, I've shared all of that, all of my stories, showing you my journey and showing how we brought more people into rooms, into cap tables, because we decided that we wanted to do beyond ourselves, wanted to live beyond ourselves. And I think it's a very important question to sit down and ask yourself today. Because you find that a lot of times when people define wealth, it's an amount of money in their bank account. To say, oh, I just want to have $1 billion. I just want to have, maybe not so much, maybe $2, $3, $5 million, my own house, my own home, maybe a house in the UK, a house in the US, that I can travel, I can buy my tickets once in a while. That's all well and good. But guess what? What's going to happen if you wake up tomorrow morning and the cash has no value? Sometimes that's a reality we don't want to face. Yeah, it's an extreme, right? But it's knowing that wealth is the ability to keep living the life you want, right, without having to trade your time for money. It's knowing that wealth is not simply a number in an account. It is freedom. Freedom of time, of movement, of choice, of voice. It's knowing that wealth is really the ability, owning businesses or assets that continue to create cash flow and ensure that you always have cash flow to live the life that you want. So real wealth has a few core features, and I'll share a bit of them. It generates without you. That's what real wealth is. You know, I was speaking with a friend of mine. I was telling him that if you have to liquidate a stock because you need cash, then you are broke, right? Right? I mean, it sounded really harsh, but it was like, that's the truth. Because a portfolio, an investment portfolio, I mean, you can start with what you have. I mean, I started with, stock market, and I moved into real estate, and then land, then property, then UK, then Anthropic, and all of that. But it's just understanding that the goal is to build a portfolio that continues to generate enough wealth, right, to fund the lifestyle that I want, to make the impact that I want, to give to the projects that I believe in, to help people around me that I believe in, right? Understanding that assets that work while you sleep, businesses with systems. Anthropic is a business with a system. That's an example of investing in a company that will continue to generate appreciation in the value of that company. Since we invested in that company, I think we invested in about $400 billion. Now it's almost $700 billion. Now think about that appreciation in wealth, right? Property, equity, intellectual property, financial instruments, all of these options are architectures of real wealth. Income that stops when you stop is not wealth. It's a salary, or it's just you building a business. I mean, sometimes we think that it's only those working 9 to 5. Even as entrepreneurs, we get into that trap, because ideally your business should be paying you a salary, right? And then, but if that business cannot work without you, then maybe it's just not a real business. Because if it's a real business with systems, you should be able to step aside and say, let me take a break for a while or build something else, and that business continues to run. That is building a business with systems. Now, real wealth survives disruption. And don't we know what disruption is in today's world, right? I mean, just think about what's happening in the Gulf. And just think about, just in the space of 2 weeks, how every single thing has changed. The price of crude oil, everything. I mean, African nations are feeling it, globally nations are feeling it, and you're asking questions like, wow, will my portfolio survive this? Well, this is why you invest in companies that will continue to grow in spite of what happens with oil price, in spite of who goes to war with another country. So real wealth is resilient across seasons. If you only thrive in one economic era, but you cannot survive a policy shift, a market correction, or a currency devaluation, then your house is built on sand, right? What does the Bible say? Build your house on the rock, right? So it comes with you, and understanding that building a portfolio is also ensuring that you understand diversification. Not just diversification across asset classes, but diversifying across currencies, diversifying across geographies as well. I remember, I think it was 2019 December. We always do this economic outlook for my community, pre-economic outlook for 2020. And I remember doing the analysis with my team at the time, and I thought, you know what, the naira is going to devalue. We're going to see a devaluation this year. It was 360 naira to $1 at the time. Now, I always tell people that I think COVID just made everything happen sooner. It was always going to happen. And we started to plan, and we thought, you know what, we need to get the members of our community into USD denominated options, right? And we walked into asset management companies and said, do you have USD denominated options? And they said, oh, you can invest in the bond, Eurobond. I thought, well, tell us more about Eurobond. So we started to learn about the sovereign wealth bonds, corporate bonds. So a country like Nigeria, they issue a bond and invite people to, invest in that bond. And it's in USD. And guess what? It's safe or almost safe until Ghana defaulted, right? Right, because the country most countries would not default on their bonds, right? Because it affects their credit rating and their ability to also continue to take more money from more investors. And of course, it was the $200,000 minimum. And what did I do? Syndicated, of course. That's what I do. I don't stop at saying, I can't afford this by myself. I say, how can I get more people into the room? And I think we made it available at $5,000 per unit. Now, the members of my community got to participate in that bond at 9%. Yes, that's an emerging market return. You won't even get that in the US. A 9% coupon return on an annual basis in USD terms. And I still have people that tell me that, look, till today I see earn coupons on the bonds that I invested in. Now, not only has the bond stayed resilient, earned 9% interest, the currency has also devalued. Today we are speaking about 1,500 naira to a dollar, right? That was a great hedge. So your portfolio has to survive disruption, and there will always be disruption. I think we're going to see even more of that in a few years to come. Your portfolio also has to compound, right? Time is the most powerful force in wealth building. The wealthy understand that money planted early grows into something that later, continues to grow. As I shared the story of MTN. At the time, when they did the direct listing, I thought this was a great opportunity. Wow, this was a company, a telecommunications company that... I think one of the simple ways, let me just share, the simple thing I think about is when I look at my bank statement, what am I spending money on? So if I see that I'm spending money on, I'm making calls, data, and everything, like, who is the company? Who's providing this? I need to be an investor in this company. I don't just want to be giving to the company. I also want to earn when the company is earning. That's the way to think about it. So one of the things I was telling my friend is, like, when I think about how much you pay on school fees, I think I was sharing with Christine as well, I think it's time for me to own a school, right? So that's a way to think about it. It's not simply you spending the money. How can you participate in also earning when that company earns? Right? So it compounds and you start. So that was how I saw MTN from that lens. And today, MTN is about 81 to 90 million lines in Nigeria alone. Massive company and a huge potential still, right? And of course, real wealth protects what matters, which is it shields your family. There's something I was discussing with a friend of mine. A lot of times when we think about money and wealth, we say, oh, how would it make my life better? How would I be able to do things that I love? And I said, it's time for us to ask empowering questions. If you're married and you have children, think about how it would change the life of your children. And this is something very personal to me because this is something I experienced as a child. Growing up, my dad, medical doctor, was running his own clinic. It was fine. We were good, basic and fine. I can't say that we were poor, but we were okay. We're just okay. But, at the time, my mom was a pharmacist and she was running her own pharmacy. And then we just had an issue with a lot of fake medicines and substandard medicines in Nigeria at the time. Of course, that's a lot better now. And she shut down her pharmacy and thought, I wanted to do better with money. And guess what? She became an IT professional. It shows you the power of a woman, right? She didn't just stop and say, oh, let me look for something else to do in my field. She thought, I'm going to change fields. And she became an Oracle certified professional at the time. I remember seeing my mom in her 40s, after 6 children, reading those huge books to certify as an Oracle professional. And this is what I always say to women, you're not a tree, you can move. You are not a tree, you can move. And she became an Oracle certified professional, got a job, and for the first time, we started to travel. Right? Now, it wasn't something I thought we suffered from, or it was something that we lacked. But it opened up opportunities to us. Why? Because my mom decided that she wanted to do better. So it was really basically her deciding and asking great questions, like taking the step, what would it mean for my family? So I want you to think about that today. And sometimes, even if you're not married, think about your parents. Think about your siblings. What would it mean if you can do more? And then people that are probably not family, but you care about, What would it mean if I can help someone's life, make them better? One of the things that I enjoy doing in Nigeria is working with an NGO called Bethesda. They help children that, can't afford to go to school, and, we get to pay for them to go to school. And it's beyond just simply paying for some children to go to school. For me, it's knowing that anytime I get to interact with those children and I hear their stories, I'm grateful that they get to go to school and get an education, just like my children are getting an education, right? And I remember when I had some issues, with revenue in my business, and I thought, no, this is not going to stop. I'm going to have to create additional streams of income because these children have to continue to go to school. So wealth has to be beyond you, right? And it has to flow from identity, not just activity. And this is where the deeper dimension comes in. And this is something I'm always grateful for, that not only did I see that with my mom, with my grandmother as well, and of course with my aunties. I also see that with women like Mrs. Ibukun Awoshika, Tara Feladurutu, and so many other names that we look up to as mentors in Nigeria, and how they exemplify the identity of a woman that creates wealth, not just for themselves, but ensuring that they can impact society, ensuring they can make better with the wealth that they have created, showing us that it is okay to be a woman with money. Right? It is okay to be a woman that makes decisions, that travels and does so many things, and still stand in that identity proudly, solidly, not letting anyone ever make you feel that there's something wrong with you having money. And it has to flow from a place of identity. Why? Because identity, to a large extent, determines how you behave. Identity determines the kind of decisions you make. Your identity also determines your results. So you have to sit down and decide, who am I? What exactly am I building here? What kind of life am I building here? Why is this important to me? Why is it important for me to collaborate with other women? Because trust me, when you're collaborating with other women, it's going to get tough. Sometimes you won't agree. It's not as easy. I mean, I can share you so many stories about some things that didn't work out, right? Sometimes you won't agree. Sometimes you have to make some tough decisions. That is this worth it? This is why, in terms of coming together with other people, you have to have clear structures. And I always tell people, key things you have to think about: the people you are collaborating with. You don't want to collaborate with people that are always whining, complaining, murmuring, and always seeing problems. You want to collaborate with people that see possibilities all the time. When they see something, they don't say, oh, you know what, guys, this is too much for us. They say, no, let's think differently. How can we get into this? Who can we talk to? How can we syndicate? It was because I had people thinking like that, I also started to think like that, right? And over time, it became my identity. And that was how I was able to replicate this across asset classes and across countries as well. So when you think about your identity, think about how it shapes how you behave, the kind of people you move with, the kind of environment you decide to, stay in. And as you collaborate with others, think about the legal structures you're putting in place. And when I share about legal structures, I have a book. It's called Investment Clubs: How to Collaborate with Others Beyond Your Paycheck. That was how Christine met me, actually. She bought a copy of my book, right? And it was me sharing the story about collaboration stories like I've shared, but understanding that there has to be structures. There has to be a structure in place to enable collaboration to work out, or else you will get into issues because we're human beings, right? So it comes to ensuring that you register with the right entity. It comes to ensuring that you have a constitution. It comes to ensuring that you have terms clearly stated out. And all of this is stated out in clear legal agreements that every member gets to sign. How do we handle investments? What's the minimum investment return that we're aiming for? What's our investment philosophy here? What is our risk profile? How do we take risk? When do we step back when the risk is too much for us? How do we make decisions when a member has to exit? Because life happens. We wish we could all stay together, but sometimes, I remember my very first investment club, 5 years down the line, we had to take the tough decision to shut down, right? Why? Because a couple of us relocated, some got married and had different goals, and we were just like, you know what, guys, this is not working for me. But thankfully, we had made plans to say, when it's time to exit, what do we do? So all of those terms have to come into how you think about collaboration, right? And how you think about how you collaborate with other people. And of course, this defining an investment philosophy. I always tell people, don't invest in what you don't understand. All of the investment options that I shared right now came with me delving into getting myself educated about that asset class, speaking to experts, speaking to mentors, tell me how to invest in VC, tell me how to invest in the US, tell me how to invest in the UK market, tell me how to invest in, startups like Anthropic and OpenAI, tell us how to get on those cap tables. Your identity is so critical because, like I said, it determines your results. So sitting down to decide that who I was prior to my MBA had to change, and shaping a new identity led me on a journey. And I'm still on that journey. And today I stand before you sharing that journey to say that when you get a wake-up call, it's your morning. You don't have to sit down and regret and wish you had known better. No, that's the time to take the right steps forward and shape an identity and say, I will become more disciplined. I would think about how I think about money. A lot of things that Rebecca already shared with you about the psychology of money. Those were things that I had to realize. There were so many things I didn't know were in my programming. So when I had to write a big check, I would literally start shaking, right? And that's the resistance that comes. When I have to invest in something that required millions of naira, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm like, no, this is resistance, right? I need to take this step forward. And now I look back and I'm like, that was small money, right? But sometimes you don't know until you start taking those steps. You take it one step at a time. My community today, we've done over $30 million across asset classes. I remember the first time we did the 50 million. Remember I said, I thought, oh, wow, that's a lot of money. And today we invest in billions. We've enabled a lot of startups in private credit, private capital, VC, venture capital as well. And it's the story that I'm so proud of. So it's not just, oh, we got rich. We bought cars, we bought houses. We can see the impact. We can see people getting employed in the companies that we invest in. We can see them changing society. And that's a story that I wish for every woman here today. So I'd like to summarize the 5 key principles that I've shared. 1, knowing that financial literacy has to be deliberate and not incidental. Now, you showing up here today shows me that you're deliberate about wealth. You're deliberate about financial literacy, investment literacy as well. You have to surround yourself with people that help you think bigger. Because we're all limited sometimes, and sometimes we don't even know the limits that we have placed on ourselves until somebody tells you that, why don't you want to do this? And you ask yourself the tough questions. You have to stop waiting, start collaborating. Stop waiting. Stop waiting until you have the money yourself. Start collaborating. And 5 things to note when you're collaborating with other people. Work with people that you like. That's a thing. You really have to work with people that you like because money is such a critical thing, right? And it's good to work with people or talk about money with people that you like. Legal structure is so critical. The entity, your terms of agreement. Make sure you work with a legal counsel to ensure that you have the right terms. Of course, you can get a copy of my book, right? Financial record keeping is so critical, right? Ensure that you have a clear investment philosophy as well. And ensure that you think about growth in terms of what works for you as a community or as a group or as a collective or as an investment club. Diversification. I can't speak too much about diversification. It is so critical. A lot of us probably stick with safe investment options. Those of us that have even ventured and say, oh, I only want to do real estate. But what happens when the real estate industry is going through a disruption, like we see happening in some countries in the world? What happens? Then you are exposed. And like I said, not just diversification across asset classes. Think about diversification across currencies and across geographies as well. And finally, build wealth from a place of identity, because your identity shapes how you behave, your identity shapes how you make decisions, and your identity shapes the results that you have. And today, I really hope and pray that as you leave this room, you craft a new identity for yourself as a woman who looks out for access, not just for herself, but for others around her. And when they get that access, they open the door to other people. They replicate that across asset classes. A woman who builds wealth from a place of identity, knowing that it is not just about me, it's about impact, right? It's understanding that I'm building wealth that survives disruption. I'm building wealth that compounds. I'm building wealth that gives me the freedom and empowers my family and empowers my generations to come. And knowing that as you make these decisions, your life will not be the same. Thank you very much. So I'll take Rebecca's cue. Do we have questions, or do I hold on? Any questions in the room right now?
I'm wondering, beyond what you said, I really like your last point. When you think about the women that you worked with, the 40 women, and then these other groups that you started investing with, what really worked for you as from a starting point beyond the legal structures? You shared stories of starting very small, but then eventually growing. What type of people, what type of professionals did you hire to run the VC fund? How often did you meet to make those decisions, etc., just to kind of get a sense of how you got moving, and especially the dynamics with women-only type of collaborations? Thank you.
Unfortunately, I do not have copies of my book, but it's available on Amazon, and I can probably work with Christine. I sold out my physical copies, and I'm writing a second book because I wrote that book in 2018, and a lot has happened that I want to update. So I'm writing a second book that would share a lot of my syndicate stories, but we can collaborate more on that, Christine. Right, and anybody else in the room that would like to work with me. Right. In my book, I shared the different models for collaboration. There's the financial model, which is where you come together, like I did with my friends at first, and we started to, collaborate and contribute money. For us, it was just contribute money together, and then we'll see what investment opportunities show up. And then I would say that we learned a lot of lessons. I always tell people that I paid my school fees in investments, right? Because we got into some investments that we probably should not have done, but I'm grateful because I can share those lessons today. And gratitude is always what opens doors, right? So that's the financial model. Then there's a non-financial model where it's a community. We're just here to learn, tap from each other's access, knowledge, which is what I started with the TGIC club, the TGI club, my 2,000 member club. It was a place for me to just share all of the information that I already had access to. Now, as that club started to grow, I realized that not everyone we want to invest in some opportunities. So we started to build syndicates, right? So we had syndicates within that community that invested in the MTN deal, like I mentioned. We had syndicates for real estate deals as well. We had syndicates for the VC fund. We had syndicates for investing in the UK and the US land banking options. So that, when you have 2,000 members, not everyone will agree. And based on that, the third model I will share is a project model. Because I realized that with the project model, we know the project that we are collaborating on. It's very clear. We are all aligned. We're all agreeing to that. And everybody comes on board for that. And then sometimes it's also time-based, like with the real estate investment club with the 40 women. It was a project-based club. We're coming together to invest in real estate. That was the goal. And then it was time-based. It was a 2-year timeline. And when that ended, the club dissolved, basically. There was no reason for continuity. So it was project-based, it was time-based, it was a clear project. And I find that also works with syndicates as well. So for instance, we wanted to invest in VC funds. Now, so they are third-party VC funds, right? Professionally managed by VC managers that understand the whole terrain. So I'm just an LP on those funds, a syndicate LP. And so we reached out to them when they started to raise. I think Lofty Inc. was raising Fund 3. So Lofty Inc. is a VC fund that invested in Flutterwave. They invested in Andela, if you know those companies. So we thought they had a great story, they had great precedents, and we wanted to participate in the third fund. And we invited them. We always invite them to speak to the members of our community, to educate them. I'm very big on financial education, and don't invest in what you don't understand. And after, the education, we realized that a lot of people were interested. We had over 100 members. Decide to syndicate. The minimum ticket was $5,000. Of course, some people did multiples of that. And then we raised $750,000. Now, at the time, the $750,000 was the same amount of money an institution also put in. So we are lead LPs, right, with other institutions on that fund. So as a lead LP, I'm a member of the LPAC, right? And so the VC fund is professionally managed. We get reports on a quarterly basis from the fund. They tell us about the startups they're investing in, the fund performance. I think to date we have received an exit on that fund, that Lofty Inc. fund, the first one. We got an exit in January last year. One of the startups they invested in Ghana got like an 8x return, which was a great story, right? And the second fund we did was a ventures platform fund managed by Kola, and team. So of course we had the first one, and a lot of people thought, let's do it the second time. So when Ventures Fund was raising their fund 4, we decided to, participate. Now, Ventures Fund they invested in Paystack. They invested in PiggyVest, some of the big companies in Nigeria. And we thought, okay, they had great stories, great precedents, they knew what they were doing. And again, we syndicated a $500,000 check at the time. And on that fund, we are LPs with institutions like IFC, BII, the British International Investment. And, when you come into those rooms, they say, okay, what institutions do you represent, Tommy? I say, I represent the TGI Club, right? I just represent people. And it's always great when you get into those rooms and you hear conversations and you realize that a lot of times they just come in it's not their investments. They're just representing an institution, and they can change tomorrow. They can leave that job and somebody else walks into the room. But this one is my money. It's the members of the syndicate, so I'm not going anywhere. You have to tell me exactly how this fund is performing. So that's with the VC fund. So I hope this answers your question. Is there anything I missed out about structuring? I think, okay, in terms of who you need legal counsel. When you're collaborating with other people, you need strong legal counsel. Depending on the asset class you're investing in, you need an expert in that field. So when we're doing the real estate, we worked with real estate professionals, real estate surveyors in our country, real estate agents. We wanted to make sure that we're getting the right advice, property advice. And, when you're working with other people, you have to ensure they're doing things the right way in terms of title, in terms of ensuring that you're doing the right thing. So legal counsel is very critical. Now, depending on the asset class, of course, get an expert as well in that field. I would also say that financial record keeping is very important. Now, if you have, the great thing about, when it comes together with other professionals, you might have skills. One or two people might have some financial skills, financial reporting skills. One of them might be an accountant, and they can bring that to bear if you don't want to pay for third-party talent or third-party skills. And they can ensure that there is record keeping. Now, you want to ensure that you register as an entity as well, which is where your legal counsel will come in, because you want to have a corporate entity registered. That corporate entity opens a bank account. That corporate entity takes in all of the money from the members. That corporate entity makes the investment. And then your legal counsel will ensure that you have legal agreements that spell out all of those terms: the corporate entity, the shares you own in that entity, what accrues to each member, how you share profits, what happens when a member wants to exit, what happens when you want to take on another member, all of those terms. Now, I have checklists, legal checklists that have to be embedded in your agreements based on experience. A lot of things that I had to learn because we had agreements signed, and then we do a deal, and then I think we got to the point we invested in a startup in the UK, my very first investment club, my 4 friends, 5 of us. And then when one of us wanted to exit, it was a case of, how do we exit? Because it's not a liquid asset, right? And because it's not a liquid asset, we can't buy you out because we don't know what the valuation of that startup would be at the time. So you probably have to get someone else to buy you out in terms of the value of what you invested in. And those were tough conversations to have. So I always say that have the tough conversations first at inception. Don't wait until you're faced with that situation before you have the tough conversations, and then make sure that all of that is, spelled out in your legal agreement so you're not making emotional decisions as well. When it comes to money, people get emotional. You want to ensure that legal agreement is your point of call so you don't get emotional with that, right? So yeah, I hope that helps.
I think my first question will be, how do we start? All of us came here with the intention to go home with something. I can speak for myself. And it's, if we hear all these talks, start now, start early, and there's no direction of where to start from, we may go home and forget what we learned today. Yeah. So my major question will be between you and Christine, is there any way we can start something up for the women in this room for us to be able to start, and then we can take it up from there? Thank you.
Okay, that sounds like a setup. Right. So I will take Rebecca's cue here first to start answer your question, to say that if you feel resistance right now, that uncomfortable feeling, it's okay, settle into it and say, yes, this is good. I'm uncomfortable for good reason because I'm learning something that's new and I want to move forward with that. Don't just hold yourself back. Because we all get that resistance, like, I'm not sure, I'm not someone that can work with other people. I'm not sure I want to be talking money with other people. Yes, it happens and it's real. But, step back and say, why am I resisting this? Is there something I need to talk about? And there's something I need to ask. There's some questions I need to ask myself. Now, in terms of what happens next, I always say that, like I say, work with people you like. Now, some women in the room may know each other, and I'll speak on Christine's side later, but I always say that we women, we have a lot of social groups, WhatsApp groups you're members of. Start having these money conversations. Are there women that you already, flow with, have a great relationship that you can say, guys, I just heard this. Are we ready to do this together, right? Start with those conversations. Now, with Christine is ensuring that we can align in terms of interest. For the women in this room, what are you interested in? What are your goals? What are you working towards? Now, if you find some common ground, then we can say, how about to set up a project-based committee or community or collective or something like that, right? Because there has to be aligned interest. It's not just random. Like I said, I think the project-based syndicates are my best success stories because everybody knows what we're coming in for. It's very clear. If it's term-based, if there's a timeline, we're all fine. My very first investment club was just a general investment club. And like I said, we had to end it at a certain point in time. Now, if that's fine, that's what you want to do, that's fine as well. And then it should also be aligned in terms of interest, also in terms of goals. Right, so if you can probably send a survey out and ask women in the room, what are you thinking about in terms of your goals? Is this something that you're willing to collaborate with other people on? if you wanted to invest in this portfolio. And of course, you also have to work with an asset management institution, a financial institution that is ready to help with bringing all of the compliance, and of course, your legal counsel has to come in. So it starts with aligned interests. Let me say that, because I don't want to just say, let's just start something together, and then you find out that we're probably left to just 5 people. That happens a lot. Like I said, we had 250 women, and then eventually we had just 40 women. So aligned interest, this is where we're going. And the great thing about the 40 Women Real Estate Investment Club, we had a diverse group of women. We had women in their 40s. We had a lady who has just finished, completed university, first job, first salary. She participated. We had women who were just about to get married. It was just a great, diverse mix of women, and it was such a great story to see that at every point in your life, you can participate in something bigger than you and collaborate on something that helps you achieve a goal, right? So yes, I would say that aligned interest. When we find aligned interest, we can build something around that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask a supporting question. While we are waiting to align ourselves, because we all know that that takes a bit of time, is there something you're working on at the moment that you are open to having people consider joining?
Okay, so yeah, this questions are really putting me on the spot, but it's great, right? That's because with my community, we stopped taking members. Whereas, because we realized that we're grown for about 8 years, right? Had a lot of investment stories. We have war battle stories. And if you join now, you will feel lost, right? I'm speaking about VC funds and all of that, and even my angel network as well. So right now, I think I'm evolving into ensuring that I can help more people set up theirs and still give you access. So it's like a network of networks, right? So start your own network, you still get access to my network, right? So that way I can meet you where you are, or can meet you at the point where you are, and if you choose to, whichever financial institution, asset management company you work with, I can consult, provide guidance, and say, okay, this is how to consider it, steps to take, things to consider. Because the truth is, if you join my community now, you're going to feel lost, and I won't be able to work with you one-on-one. Like, I have a team that would talk to you, send you emails. I would not talk to you one-on-one. If you want to work with me one-on-one, you can talk to Christine about that. And if you have a collective and you want to work with me on that, I provide consulting on that. So like I said, I've done this across multiple collectives. Not just my investment club, my investment community, my angel network in the US as well. So I know it's different across the board. With an angel network, it's different because we are basically just investing in startups. That's how we got into the OpenAI and the Anthropic as well. So with the project-based club, it's also different as well. And then based on location, geographies, what kind of entity should you consider? What kind of legal structure should you consider if you're in the US, if you're in the UK? If you also want to do like land banking in the US as well, what should you consider? So all of those things are determined based on your goal and what you want to achieve, really. So I think that's the best way I'll work with you.
Thank you.
When you're talking, I heard a lot of overhead costs, right, involved in managing a fund like that. And so how do you deal with that? Do you take like a percentage of whatever people pay, or do you take an extra percentage of the interest that you make, or how does that work? To cover those expenses?
Yes, so with the community, you pay a membership fee to join. That's our initial structure, and it's a one-time fee. You pay a one-time fee, you join the community. Now, with the VC fund, when we made the investment, there was a one-time administrative fee as well. And then we also get to earn on carry. Now, if you know how the VC structure works, is when there is an exit, which is a 10-year period, right? So the main VC fund, I think they get a 20-25% carry, and we get like 2 or 3% carry. So, of course, within the wider community, you get to pay to join as a member. And that gives you access to our courses, all of the resources, all of the webinars, archives of information built over a period of time. And then when there's a deal, you make the investment, and there's a transparent, clearly stated fees that you pay as well. Because, just like you work with an asset management company, right? There are brokerage fees, there are legal fees, all of that is stated at the beginning, and then you get to pay that. Now, that's my structure. With the Angel Network as well, which I'm just on the board, the governing council and the board, you get to pay as a member, and then it's a per deal basis. When there's a deal, you contribute to that, and then you decide, and there's a fee as well. There's the administrative fee and all of the legal fees involved as well. Now, if you decide to do a project-based community, for instance, that is focused on real estate, right? That would be, if it's just a few friends coming together, that would be a structure where you contribute your funds, and then from that fund, determine if you're going to take additional, contribution for the fees that will come, legal counsel, which is why I always tell people to tap into your friends or people that have skills, so you don't have to take on the additional overhead, which might not be required, or which is just additional cost, like you rightly mentioned. So ensuring that, I mean, you don't necessarily have to go and look for someone who is a legal professional and say, you must be a member, right? Because we need your skills for free. But if you do have friends that have those skills or have friends, tap into that, right? And I'm sure, I mean, women, we are amazing people. We have skills, and we can bring that to bear here. I'm sure there are a lot of top professionals in the room that can bring those skills to bear. That would help with managing overhead costs. Now, in terms of how you monitor, right? Now, with my community, we have a structure where I have a team of research analysts that work on part-time basis, for instance. So they do other things. They do other deals. They are investors as well, because that's the model that works for me. In terms of full-time support staff, I probably just have one or two, right? So I have a team I have an advisory board, right? Consisting of a lot of people that I've met over a period of time. So they share their skills and expertise as well. Then I have support staff that helps with emails, responding to people's questions and all of that. Then I also have part-time, people that work part-time. Some of them want to intern, right? We have a lot of young college graduates that reach out to me a lot of times, a number of times on LinkedIn to say, can I intern? Oh yeah, come intern for 6 months, right? And help out, right? So you want to tap into things like that to ensure that you manage cost. Yeah.
It was something encouraging, interesting, but long at the same time. Which pushed me to ask you this question, like, to let us know what was your hardest moment in your entrepreneurial journey, where you felt like giving up, what happened, and how did you manage to bounce back? Thank you.
All right, that question made me take a deep breath. Before I go ahead, I'm sorry. I want to acknowledge my adopted sisters in the room. They came all the way with me from Nigeria. Please, can we clap for them? Thank you. Right, and yeah, toughest moment in my entrepreneurship journey, because I was actually working 9 to 5. After my MBA, I did work for a period of time before I stepped out to do this full time. Was when we had an investment default, right? I mean, think about me telling everyone, come invest, let's do things together, let's collaborate. You know, finding businesses, doing due diligence on those businesses, working with those businesses as partners, doing all of the legal structures, ensuring everything goes well. And then business runs into an issue, and then there's a default. And you're faced with a very tough decision. I think at that point, you know, I shut down, right? And a lot of things I look back now in retrospect, and I understand a lot about myself. And I shut down when I realized it was something that I had from childhood, right? When I face a tough situation, I simply just shut down and keep quiet, and I think that that's the best way to manage it. This is just to let you know that who you are will show up in a crisis, either way or not. So sometimes, and you might not even recognize that until you're faced with that crisis. So sometimes you can't even plan enough to be a better person. Some things you just have to experience, right? So this is a company that I'd worked with for 5 years. I believed in that company, right? And it was such a tough decision because I'd put myself out there, a visible partner, and then they were experiencing this default, and people started to scream, oh, they must have been a scam, you know, and you were working with them. Did you do your due diligence? Did you know everything about them? I was getting trolled online. I was getting so many negative comments, and I shut down. And I shut down because, for me, I have this fix-it attitude. I always want to fix things. How do I fix this? But I couldn't see a way to fix it. Like, I couldn't get them to pay, right? They were supposed to pay an investment that was due at the time, and I couldn't get them to pay because they didn't have the cash at the time. They had some cash issues. And then I had to go speak to the investors and explain to them that the company doesn't have the cash to pay you. And of course, like I said, money is emotional, right? Because you're dealing with people that, oh, I put in that money because I had a plan for it. I wanted to do something with it. I wanted to do all of that with it. Which is why you also need to understand risk, right? Don't put something you can't afford to lose in some investment options. And a lot of times we teach these things, but you see, some people don't know or will not take the right decision until they are faced with, oh my God, I shouldn't have put this amount of money in there. Because if you understand the risk of that particular investment option and you put in a lot of money that you cannot afford to lose, when you do lose the money, it's going to be serious. It's a lot of heartache, right? So for me as a leader in that situation, it was, how do I manage? The investors were screaming, the business was not responding to me, I couldn't fix it, so I shut down. And my team was handling, responding to people. And then over time, it started to seep in. Oh, why is she not talking to us? Why is she quiet? All of that. And people started to say all kinds of things. Oh, she's arrogant. She's not. She's full of herself. But the truth is, I was sick. I shut down. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know how I was going to fix it. And I realized I had to come to the point and say, Tommy, it's okay. You can't fix this, but show up. Right? Because I think Rebecca also mentioned, as women, we always want to make sure that everybody around us is fine. But I had to come to the point where, like, I can't do this, but I will still have to show up and say, guys, this is the situation, this is everything that is happening. And also be fine with everybody not agreeing with me and everybody saying whatever they wanted to say about me. And also understanding my identity in that situation. Because for me, it was, Tommy, who are you in this moment? Are you going to stand in your integrity and say, this is exactly what happened, right? We believe in this business and there's a default, and this is what they're doing to fix it, but they're not responding to me at this time. Now, do I believe the business is a scam? No, because a lot of people went online and started to say, oh, this business is fraudulent, all of that. No, we did DD. They had the right licenses based on compliance in the financial industry and all of that. But not to bore you with a long story, it was understanding at the time that I had to think about my identity in that moment, understanding my shortcomings, and coming to terms. Trust me, this was over a period of 3 to 4, 5 years, right? And I was still running my business, and I had to take the company to court. Right? And eventually I got a court judgment. So tell me, when I say I have battle scars, I have battle scars. And I will share that story in my book in full detail. But it was owning up to the fact that I had to show up, even though I did not have answers. Right? So I would show up on the webinar, and afterwards I would break down and cry. Because I wanted to fix it so bad. I wanted to tell people that I know exactly how to solve this problem. But I had to get to the point where I said, Tommy, you can't fix this, and it's fine. You are not less of a person than who you are before. You are enough. And it's okay to acknowledge that in this situation, I can't. Now, I also realized that in not showing up at the beginning, people started to doubt and say, oh, why is she not talking to us? Because my team was responding, but they wanted to see the leader. And I thought that they were getting responded to, but also understanding that sometimes they want you to show up. Now, it was also asking myself, did they want to see me in tears, break down, because I wanted to keep this hard face, but also learning that I had to also learn to be vulnerable. I'm typically not someone who likes to be vulnerable. So that whole crisis taught me a lot about myself in that moment, in a way that I had to face up to the fact that this is where you have to grow. These are the things that you have to build yourself on. You have to get some additional start speaking to some mentors. So I reached out to a couple of my mentors at the time. I started to share with them, and they started to tell me that, okay, we've also experienced this, and this is how we managed it. This is how we navigated this. And I realized that, you need to share more about the stories and let us know how to navigate this. So what did I do? I decided that I was going to take responsibility. Even though I could not fix it, I was going to take responsibility. I was going to own up to the fact that this has happened. And I also had to go the legal route, getting my lawyers on board, ensuring that we're doing things by the book, ensuring that we're doing things that would ensure that anyone who will write the story will say that we took all of the right steps in ensuring that we could get some sort of, some recompense, basically, for lack of a better word. So yes, when you face a crisis, you have to ask yourself some tough questions. Did I fail here? Did I do something wrong? But what I always tell people is that I don't look back in regret. I believe in the decisions I made at the time, but I have learned a lot from it. So I have learnings, and I share those lessons very freely, but I don't regret it. And I have become a whole new person because of that experience. So I'm grateful for the experience. I'm grateful for the lessons. I'm grateful for everything that it has shaped me to become today. And because of that, I think I can face the next crisis. I hope I don't want any more crises. But yes, I hope that answered your question in my roundabout way. But yes.